Did you listen to Jeff and Professor Hamo in the morning? Here's what you missed.
It is exactly 10 minutes past the hour, 7 o'clock, and it's that time where we interview a guest about the state of the nation. And today, Dagoretti South, Member of Parliament. We know him better as KJ. You know him as John Kiarie. In the hizzo. Where's welcome, Sana?
Thank you very much, Jeff. It's an honor to be here.
Harambee Stars.
Oh man, it's a big celebration.
Were you there?
No, I couldn't make it yesterday because we were having quite a series of things that we were doing in the constituency. But I was cheering Harambee Stars on, and we had a few of our people who we had sponsored to go to the event. So we were part of the Jazza Steady movement. We made sure that some of our guys who are from the Dagoretti South constituency made it there. So we were very well represented. And you've got to say that they did us proud as a country. They were amazing.
Yes.
And it's not about just Ethiopia. The whole build-up to this has been amazing for Harambee Stars.
Yes.
And it goes to show just what a little effort or a little investment in our young people can do for this country.
Absolutely. And encouragement.
Encouragement.
Sure.
And right from the top, when we all rally behind a cause as Kenyans, we've been known to deliver quite. And we are seeing a good team that is merging people who are playing internationally and young local people from the local team. The synergy was good because we've always had a Harambee Stars that is two teams in one, where the internationals do not gel with the local kids. But this time around, it's been amazing.
Oh, the chemistry.
It's been amazing.
I'm an Amnagani, my friend. My friend.
Mimi, I can gel for that incentive. I can gel with anyone.
So somebody is short 50 mic right now.
It's not somebody. Actually, if I had it right, this is coming from our awards kitty, because the ministry does have an allocation which is budgeted, which is called an awards kitty. And what happens is that when a Kenyan represents the country in a certain way, or brings glory to the country, whether it's an athlete, whether it's a volleyball team, whether it's a Kenya football team, there's an allocation for awards. And in fact, many people were asking about the 50 million Kenya shillings, and what they don't realize is that we have actually been, as a country, awarding people who represent us well. At times it doesn't go as smoothly. I'm reliably told that the government does owe some athletes something close to the tune of 20-something million for athletes who have won and have been promised the award, the cash award from these awards kitty. But it does exist.
It does exist.
Budgeted.
So, but what takes so long for these guys to get this money then?
Well, one of the things that I've come to learn working, what I didn't know from outside is this animal called government bureaucracy. It's a real thing. It's actually a real thing where money is allocated, it's budgeted for, but to get that out for implementation can take forever. And let me tell you, you can never point a finger at anyone. Government is just a machine, and it moves in its own motion, in its own time. And at times you can never quite explain some of these delays. When it comes from the presidency, when the presidency promises, then you sure something will move a bit faster, like in the case of Harambee Stars and the 50 million. But all in all, it was a great celebration for the country. Harambee Stars did make us proud. And they actually became the stars that we want them to be. Not the little candle that has been now and then.
Na Sonko akarusha zake.
Na Sonko akafanya
ya kutoa.
Akacheza kama yeye. Akarusha zake za kutoa. Now Kenya pia, let's celebrate, even as we're celebrating our leaders. The stadium. Let me tell you, there are guys who are turned away because Kenyans had come out to support their team, and you've got to say that the whole effort of making it a free entry also did help to that.
You know what else I liked?
Yes.
Counties like Mombasa
sending
busloads, courtesy Sultan, but busloads all the way from coast to Kasarani.
It was a proud Kenyan moment. It was a proud Kenyan moment, and no one did care about. No one did care about who came from where. And if you saw what the DJs were doing, because some of these things that happen off the pitch are something to report about. when they take us on a tour around the country with, what do you call it, with the music, you could tell every Kenyan community is represented. Even the people who no one expected to be in the stadium. They played a Gikuyu song and the whole stadium goes up. And everyone says that Gikuyus don't show up for football matches. It tells you that all of Kenya was here.
Weko.
That's the only song Jeff knows. But I know Jeff can sing a lot of Kamaro.
Oh man. God rest his soul.
And Hamon needs to bring his guitar.
But come on. Tufanye tribute.
Yes, we need.
Oh yeah, actually we should do a tribute.
Yes.
And also when you're taking your country show on the road, make sure that you infuse a bit of Kamaro.
Oh, we must.
A legend.
Raigwa.
That is the only Kisaperi you can speak.
KJ anakuja hiyo show. KJ ako kwa hiyo show.
Bunge ina represent. Bendi kubwa ya bunge. We need to celebrate the man.
Yes.
Yes.
So KJ, now on to very serious things like the referendum. You know, it started off as a joke. Let's face it. It started off as a joke. Actually, what I remember on my show on JKL, he came and said, "You know what, guys? Watch this space. There will be a referendum before 2020." People laughed. People said, "No way! This constitution. How are we gonna change it so soon?" Now it's a reality, KJ. There is a referendum looming. Even though we don't know what the question will be, we don't know how it will be tailored. What are your thoughts? I mean, is this referendum just for the few, the privileged, just to appease certain groups, or what?
Well, Jeff, it didn't come as a surprise. The new Kenya, and I'm talking about the Kenya post 1992. We've always had cycles that we go into in every election cycle, and one of the things is that there's always something that happens midtown. Politically, you will go into an election, halfway through there will be something dramatic that happens. It could be realignment of parties, it could be a referendum, it could be anything. And even more so in the very recent political history, when you think about it, when we went to the election of 2002, people tell us that there had been a memorandum of understanding where they had agreed that they are going to change the constitution within 100 days, which did not happen. But midway through, from 2002, in 2005, of course we went to a referendum. That was halfway through. The election of 2007 happened, and midway through, which was 2010, another referendum happened. So it's looking like it is in our political calendar to do these things.
Yeah.
Now, but there are critical things which I would like to call the talks before the talks. Before we even talk about the referendum, we should have some critical questions answered. One of which is Kenya ready for a referendum in terms of money? When you think about it, we were in an election where the presidential election, actually the general election and the repeated presidential election costed us over 1 trillion Kenya shillings. Are we financially able to carry out a referendum? That's one question. The second question is, how well constituted is the IEBC to conduct a national referendum as we speak right now, even as we talk about the referendum. Now, coming to the referendum questions, we've got to ask ourselves, what are the issues on the table before we reduce them to referendum questions? And one of the big issues is that there's a school of thought that is pushing the whole idea of inclusivity. And the argument here is that over 70% of Kenya's population belongs to the top 7 or 8 ethnic communities. And they're saying that if there was space created at the top for the 7 communities, then maybe we would reduce the ethnic animosity that comes at every election cycle. And they're saying that there is a possibility for us to be able to create a president with a deputy, prime minister with 2 deputies, and that's already 5 as we speak. There'll be, of course, opportunities in the leader of government business in parliament. There'll be a speaker in parliament, there'll be a speaker in senate, and so on and so forth. And saying that that would be an inclusive arrangement. The other school of thought is saying that we cannot go to a referendum to create positions for Jeff, KJ, and Hamo, that it is not even morally right. So these are the two schools of thought that are fighting. But what I can tell you, Jeff, for a fact, is that if the referendum is a government project, it will happen. And we have seen it before. The moment in the coalition government that President Mwai Kibaki came together with Raila and said that they're going to make their campaign. If it's a government project, it's going to happen.
It's going to happen.
Yeah. So if there is goodwill coming from the presidency, and of course there will be need for goodwill also from the people who have joined the presidency in the handshake. If Raila and Uhuru decide that there's going to be a referendum, it will be very hard to stop.
And it seemed like our deputy president was opposing it for the longest time, up until like late last week. He did an about turn.
I don't think it was an about turn, because if you had been listening to the deputy president beyond the headlines, he had been speaking about what his his idea of a referendum would be like, and he had been consistent about the things that he wasn't happy with coming into the referendum. And he was actually the leader of the school of thought that was saying we cannot go into a referendum to build positions for individuals. However, he's on record as one of those people who really opposed this Katiba as it is today.
Correct. He was in the know. You're right.
He was in the know.
Yeah, from 2010.
Yes.
There are others who are saying that we can do the referendum, but we tag na election.
That's it's a possibility, and it's been done before. There are countries that actually conducted by public opinion. When you're talking about some Scandinavian countries which are very advanced, everything goes to a referendum. They just make it not as acrimonious as we make our referendums here, but every single political decision is taken to a referendum.
Like today should have been a public holiday.
After
Jana.
Oh no!
Yes.
After Jana.
Kuna watu walipoteza viatu.
We are so behind. We are so behind on nation building. When you think about the time that we lost last year, we lost a lot of time. I think the one thing that I wouldn't be vouching for is a national holiday. I know there's people who are claiming that now the Corino need to give us a holiday. We need any excuse to go on holiday.
KJ,
yes.
Last week we just had Moi Day reinstated. What was that about?
Jeff, I have my own thinking about Moi Day, and it is not personal. I was just amazed at Kenyans. I was seeing Kenyans sending messages of goodwill and reminiscing, quote unquote, the good old times. And I was saying, wow, this is a different Kenya, because 16 years ago, it was a yote yawezekana moment. 16 years ago. Wow. 8 years ago, Kenyans were the ones saying that as we do the new constitution, there's some holidays that we need to throw out. And they were very, acrimonious about it. So my thinking is that how time heals a lot of things, because now we are here and people are wishing themselves a happy Moi. And let me tell you, what is going to happen is that Moi is going to be iconized, almost to the stature of Nelson Mandela. And that's what happens with time. Time does heal a lot. So we've got to ask ourselves, who's going to benefit politically from a very elevated Moi status? And it's going to be a thing to talk about.
I'm telling you, KJ, you just nailed it. 16 years is not a long time
it's
ago,
not
right?
a long time ago. And when you think about the people who are flocking Uhuru Park, yote yawezekana moment. And Jeff, I'll tell you that on the morning of December 30th, I think it was 30th of 2002. Back then there was no live TV.
Right.
So there was one station that was very close to Uhuru Park, and they were recording the proceedings on tape, and someone would walk to Kimathi Street and deliver the tape, and they would play the proceedings that morning. And I was watching them from the house and realized that this is not real time. I woke up from my house and walked to Uhuru Park, because on that day the traffic was crazy. You couldn't, and I was one of those people. I can even point out the tree I was sitting under in that mammoth crowd, because it was a momentous time in Kenya's history, and I witnessed it live. And what was palpable, there was almost call it hope, You know, we were called the most optimistic people in the world on that day as we were in the stadium chanting. And Kenyans had had enough of Moi. I remember people who, when finally the convoy showed up at Uhuru Park, there are guys who were actually throwing mud because it was a very messy morning. It had rained overnight, and there were people throwing mud at the convoy. And some of us, you know, were besides ourselves, knowing who Moi had been and how bigger than life he had become. For these guys to be throwing mud at them, there was actually one guy who I remember very vividly who jumped onto the processional way and actually lay prostrate in front of Moi's convoy, and it had to stop for a moment until this guy had his time disappointing Nyayo. Then the proceedings could go on, and that was Kenya 16 years ago. And then today we wake up to people playing as Nyayo songs. The one that I would never been able to explain in my childhood was the Fimbo ya Nyayo, and that one.
Oh yeah, you know the one I can't explain is KICC.
KICC.
The inspiration behind the KICC.
The tower.
The tower.
Who would have known? Who would have known?
Who would have known? Important, iconic architecture to our brothers from the Eastern Province. The tower. He had a guest right?
According to Mutiso.
The tower.
That was unbelievable, man.
It's you know, and that's a good thing about Kenya.
Yes.
I remember Nyayo. We don't know if he said it, but when we were young, there was a joke that used to do the rounds that Nyayo had said that in Kenya every morning you've got to start a conversation, you've got to start gossip, and according to the people who are telling this story, they say that Nyayo had said that if there is nothing trending by 10 a.m. start yours, start a rumor. So we started trending on KOT long before Twitter.
Yes.
Yeah. Even long before South Sudan happened.
Oh yes, Jeff, I'm hearing you on the receiving end for hosting. And the guy said he was a blessed guy. He has been blessed by
Jesus Christ.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah, I mean, who am I to question Jesus?
Who are you to question Jesus?
Utafanya interview lini ya Yesu? Tungoje uende mbinguni.
It does speak to many things, Jeff, and I think one of the bigger conversations that no one is having is whether we are proceeding towards a borderless Africa. Because it's a big conversation, even as we are having our small discussion about Kenya and our referendum and our small tiny little problems. We need to be asking ourselves what is going to happen in terms of building a borderless Africa. And why I say that is because your two biggest interviews this week have actually been from people living outside of this country.
Bobby Wine,
man. Bobby Wine.
And you know, I see him as when Museveni started, right?
Oh, yes.
That's Bobby Wine.
And he had to come to Kenya and touch the oracle, like they all did, you know. Museveni in the 80s did come to Kenya, touch the oracle.
Yes.
So did Kagame.
Correct.
But Bobby Wine, you know, he might not be what people would imagine for a revolutionary leader, but he does iconize a certain thinking of a generation. And when you think about it, he's one of the leaders of this generation.
No doubt.
No
doubt. And you're right about the CFTA, Continental Free Trade Agreement. This thing it's a game changer.
It's a game changer, and it's going to happen. But the politicians are not moving as fast as other sectors are moving. Let me tell you, in the cultural area where Hamo is a player, these guys have done a borderless Africa long before the politicians are able to do what we want to do for Africa. When you think about it, you know, Sauti Sol today is as big in Nigeria as it is in Kenya. Yemi Alade is big here, and people in the comedy industry, in the generation of Professor Hamo, are doing shows in Burundi. We are hearing them in Uganda, and so on and so forth. So culturally, Africa is ready for a borderless Africa. And what that does for anyone who has a commodity to take to market is that instead of thinking of a market of 40 million Kenyans, you can now start thinking about a market of 1.5 billion Africans, which is something big. And Jeff, you're a trailblazer. You're a champion of a borderless Africa.
Hata
ukichapwa namna gani mambo ya South Sudan, we will all remember you brought us Bobby Wine, and we remember you brought us the very navy blue guy from South Sudan. Blessed by Jesus. It was an amazing interview.
Man, and the general.
Yes, we give it to you.
But you know what? People judge. They'll always judge.
Yes.
Watch your own game.
Yeah.
I say, you know what? Give a man a rope long enough.
Yes. And
if you're gonna hang yourself,
they'll hang themselves.
shout his uncle.
It's true. It's true.
But if you're gonna kill the messenger like they used to do in back in the day,
you're just a messenger.
I'm just a messenger.
Yes. And whether we like it or not, I remember when I was growing up, they said that usanii ni kioo cha jamii. You're just a reflection of what we are as a community, and so they might kill Jeff Koinange today, but there will be someone else who will still tell the same story, whether you like it or not. And when I was in comedy, I remember we shared this with you. One of my mantras was what Oscar Wilde had written, and this amazing author once said that if you want to tell them the truth, make them laugh, as Hamo does. Otherwise, they'll kill you. So just keep up with your humor, even as you're telling them the truth.
Yes.
Because if you don't make them laugh as you're telling them the truth, they'll kill you. Yeah.
Wise words from wishing you were John Kiari, Member of Parliament for Dagoretti South. We're going to take a quick break, come back, talk about the DCI and the DPP. What is they're doing an incredible job, these two, eh? I mean, Wario, they're looking for Wario in Austria.
Interpol. Wametuma Interpol watafuti Wario.
And remember, we didn't have any new laws that were put.
Right.
The office existed, the laws that they're working on existed.
Yes.
So it just took people who had a drive. And they had a drive towards a cause.
Yeah.
And these people have revolutionized
And
this
they had a
process.
drive and big Back in the moon, we like to call us sinach. I prefer spinach. But I know who I am. Yes, indeed. And we know who we are. Hata KOT wakituchapa, we know who we are.
Leo mtani tungesema wameamka na wewe.
Leo ni wewe.
And I can tell you from experience,
Yes.
I having been a recipient, I've been on Ate, I can tell you what you do, Jeff, is please don't let them get to your mind. Some of these people are not even worth the time that you would take responding to them.
Right.
And trolling is real in Kenya.
Yeah.
And I sit on the Committee of Information, Communication and Innovation at the Kenya Parliament.
Yeah.
And we did make an attempt to try and sanitize the Kenyan digital spaces with the cybercrime bill. So that's a fallback plan. If worse comes to us, Jeff, just go and look at at paragraph 12 of the new act. It might be something helpful for you.
Is that right?
Yes.
Something, Mheshimiwa. Thanks. Very helpful.
He's an amazing storyteller. Amazing storyteller.
Incredible. In those days, you know, I was just telling Hamo last week, you know, Masak Hugh was married to Miriam Makeba at one point.
Oh, is it?
Those two.
Did they have any children?
No, they were married for a year and a half in New York. They were in exile, you know, struggle.
Yeah.
They call it doing the struggle.
Oh, the struggle.
Yeah, struggle. Early 60s. So they were married for like a year and a half.
But why would they deny the world some children?
Can you be offspring of those two?
Amazing. Oh. That's a good story. I didn't know about that. Yeah, I didn't know about that. But we've got what you'd call superstar couples in Kenya.
Yes.
And we're really watching them. We are watching them. To see what they'll come up.
Name two.
Nameless and Wahoo.
Okay, that's good. There you go.
That one we're looking at it.
Yeah.
Then we've got the new generation, Size 8 and DJ Mo.
Oh.
We want to see if their babies will have a bit of some rhythm. You know.
Macheke fulani.
What about Bahati?
Macheke.
Oh yeah, Bahati. But you know, Bahati is Bahati and a prayer partner.
Oh.
We're not talking about we're talking about two mega stars coming together. Yeah.
Speaking of megastars, Diane Reeves will be the headline. In the meantime, we asked you before the break, by the way, tweets are coming in so thick and so fast. And I was asking you, are you enjoying Bunge? Are you having a good time, as good as one can have in Bunge?
Jeff, you know what my journey has been like. I did vie in 2007.
Yes. And you won, right?
And yeah, well, we won that election, Jeff. And you were there to cover the stories in real time. Yes. And you remember what happened at KICC,
yes.
and also what happened at Kenya Science for our constituency. But that's what under the bridge. So from 2007, you know, I didn't leave the ground. I actually kept doing what it is that I'd said I'd be doing. So there hasn't been a big shift in terms of lifestyle. It's exactly what I was doing, only that now I'm doing it, with a portfolio, with a title now as a member of parliament. However, I would say I'm enjoying it as much as anyone would enjoy, serving in such a position. Of course, there's few things that you'll need to learn, and the learning curve is very steep because you have to learn them on the job and you have to learn them fast. Yeah. But I would say that I'm having a good time.
Wonderful. Yes. Mitch Kitoi says, KJ is not a politician, but a sign of hope for Kenyan youth that tomorrow will be better.
Thank you very much, Kit. I really appreciate that.
Kangede says, I love the way KJ articulates issues all-rounded to say the least. I can't even hop into the office just to listen to this great guy.
Wow, thank you, Kangede. Appreciate it, sir.
Ako kwa gari, ako kwa mathria, ako kwa java, ako wapi?
Lakini yeye hope ofisi yake si PwC. Story for another day.
Moses Kipngetich anasema Jeff salimia mheshimiwa KJ sana na muulize hiyo pesa ya Rio Olympics. Wow. But you know what, mheshimiwa, karma is what they say it is. It may take a year, may take 5 years, but they'll come after you eventually.
We were offended by Rio. We were offended by Rio.
Correct.
And one day I'll tell you a story about myself and the Ministry of Youth. One day we'll have that conversation.
Yes.
And one of the big things, Jeff, you know my history. Actually, we came into public service on the platform of the youth movement. I'd been involved in the youth movement for many years. In fact, that's how I met Hamo many years ago.
Was he still a professor then?
He was a great professor, honing his skills. Yeah, he was an associate professor.
Now he's a full professor.
And Jeff, the real thing was actually really offensive. And it's not even just about the money that was not given to the athletes, but to think about the extent to which they went. You remember a raid that revealed uniforms in people's houses in Westlands. It was an untidy affair. And our performance that year, remember, was pathetic. And not because we didn't have good athletes or we didn't have the talent that was needed. It's just that we mismanaged our talent. And let me tell you, this real thing does speak to many other things. The Jubilee government is getting, is getting big stick on the issue of stadiums. You remember there was a promise to do stadiums around the country. And you can imagine if the people who are managing Rio are the same people who are given the responsibility to see to it that stadiums are built around the country. If Rio was such a mess, then you can imagine what the progress in terms of construction of this stadia is. So Rio, for me, is something that needs to be resolved promptly and decisively. There has to be what in Vioja Mahakamani they used to say, ili iwe funzo kwa wengine walio na tabia kama hiyo.
Yes, I totally understand that.
Ili iwe funzo.
Sema tena?
Yeah, jaribu. Well said, Mheshimiwa. Cyrus Rotich, he's all the way in Old Pusimoru. Yeah, in Narok County, you know where there's all those troubles. Cyrus says, on matters boldness, unmatched leadership, sophisticated way of dealing with issues and trailblazing, KJ stands alone.
Is that me?
Hey,
that's a citation.
Cyrus. Masha DX wa Taxify Masha wameongea juu yenu leo. Page 2. Correct. Masha says, Jeff, big up Mheshimiwa KJ. He's a kind of a man we need in that bunge. He's focused.
Thank you, sir.
Masha, angalieni mna shida huko Taxify. Sawa tu. KJ. Oh, Dexter, as in Kehio Duncan. KJ used to make me laugh hard when you used to do the late music. Oh man, you were those days. Those days.
I mean, and we had fun with it,
bro.
We had fun with it.
Yes.
And I have to say to Kenyans, you know, they don't know this, but Jeff was actually one of our biggest fans. Anytime, yes,
I was tickled,
anytime
man.
Jeff was in the country.
Yes.
Back then he was globetrotter.
I was a tourist.
Yeah. Anytime he was in the country on a Thursday evening,
Yes.
because we had ridiculous night.
Correct.
On a Thursday evening.
Yes.
What the new generation, Professor Hamo, have taken up the Thursday night was actually ridiculous night, and it was an amazing night. And every time that Jeff was in the country on a Thursday night, he would come to the
show
country and support us.
Show up.
So we did have fun, and we were young, Jeff.
Yes.
We were naive also. I remember I started out TV comedy when I was 19. Wow. I was in my first year in university. And I have something to show for what I did in my youth.
And look at him now.
I mean,
Mongolia Sasa.
Look at the things he's achieved.
Well done, KJ. Well done. When you look back, and you know, you guys were so young, like you said, the boldness of the time. Because, you know, again, we come back to last week and Moi Day being celebrated. And you guys would show up.
Dressed up the Moi.
And JJ Kamotho.
Yeah? Do you remember those days that my father used to read the people na akimaliza anachoma
Vile watakuja.
Watakuja. Hata huwezi ongea kuhusu Moi. Alafu watu wanatokea tu ati yao ni Moi. Wanataka kudance. You know, tulikuwa tunaona ridiculous kama mmefunga dirisha. Kwa kambi. Na sauti mna.
If it doesn't scare Tony and Walter to look back at those times and imagine how bad it could have gotten, it does scare me. You know, they say hindsight is 2020, and I'm glad I didn't see myself at this time back then, because I don't think we would have done what we did. There was a good fusion of you know, a good drive of talented guys, but also the naivety of youth. We were young, no responsibilities. You didn't have kids, you didn't worry about stuff. And then, of course, you're in a national university. You remember national universities used to brew the rebels. In fact, most of the revolutionary minds back then were people either at the university as students, or the professors are the ones who used to actually be the thinkers for the revolution. So we were in a national university, and that did help also in forming our opinions. But we didn't start out to poke fun at leadership. We were actually just reflecting what the society was saying, and
it worked.
It worked. And in a big way. And you've got to thank Kenyans, because I remember, you know, episode 1, episode 2, episode 3. By episode 4, we had become one of the most watched shows in Kenya's history.
And those videos were sought after.
Oh, yes.
Sought after.
Yes, they were.
I hope you have copies somewhere in the library, yeah?
Oh, they do exist somewhere, and I wouldn't want for us to be telling the ridiculous story just around Tony Walter and KJ. You've got to remember people like Bob Nyanja, the director-producer, who gave us the opportunity to be on TV back then. And he was also a revolutionary when you think about it. He gave the show direction, he gave leadership, but also the technical know-how. An alumni of Bob Jones University. It's a beautiful film school.
Did you always know you're going to Bungei? Did you know back then? Did you say, you know what?
Do you know, Jeff, I had almost made my mind when growing up that I would never be in active politics. I grew up in a political family, and I'd seen what it is to be like to be in politics. And in fact, the family that I grew up in was actually on the wrong side at that time, if you have to say it that way, because my dad was actually in the movement. He had been in the second liberation movement, and we grew up knowing what government can do to people who they used to call dissidents. So I almost was certain that I was not going to be in active politics. But then it so happened that everything that we were working on was leading us towards being, participating in active politics. When I was in high school, I had opportunity to write in the newspaper. I had a column. It was called the Head on Coration, which was
Coration.
Head on Coration. Yes, it was features cartoons. And if anyone read that, you remember it was very political. We had a segment we called Vile Tunaifeel, kama wa vijana, and I would talk about political issues. Ridiculous happened to be political, and then before we knew it, the performing artists in our generation became so influential and we had to do something with the influence.
Absolutely.
And that's how we ended up with the youth movement, the Vijana Tugutuke, and so on and so forth.
There's always a reason.
Which
always a
also-
reason.
yes.
Before the rest of the before the top of the hour, let's get a few phone calls in. I'm sure there's people from Dagoretti South who want to talk to Mheshimiwa. 0722 20 88 20, 0734 20 88 20. What are your thoughts? Dagoretti South, Member of Parliament John Kiaria in the house. KJ, man, it's, you know, your dreams are valid. Mheshimiwa, your dreams are valid.
And every Kenyan's dreams are valid.
Signal Ruka Dagoretti South.
CK.
Obviously, yeah.
Mbona CA? Unajua Keza amesema
Yeah.
before aende afanye ya Kibaki ya Mamoi. Sasa tunatafuta yake appropriate yake. Afanye kamoja ka atuoli.
0722 20 88 20 or 0734 20 88 20. Hassan Aiden says, wow, what a show. KJ is talking a lot of sense. He's the kind of leader this country needs.
Thank you, Hassan.
Rich Kitoi. And then ask KJ where Tony has been. And because he's been lost.
Tony Jogona is a creative director at one of the leading media communication and advertising agencies. So you're seeing a lot of Tony's work. You just don't know that he's
You just
the one
don't
doing
know.
it. Yeah, he's making good advertising, he's making good ads and
Nice.
communication campaigns.
Hot 96, you're on the air. Good morning. Silikwambia, Dagoretti kuna nini hiyo? Gong Road wanatengeneza. That's in your constituency? The
Part of it, part of Ngong Road, that's from Nakumatt Junction
Yes.
all the way to Lenana.
Yes.
School.
Onto the southern bypass.
Yes, yes.
Niwewe.
That's Dagoretti Nisisi.
What are they telling you? What are they telling you as in terms of a time frame?
Oh, in terms of the construction?
Yes.
Well, it's actually within the time that had been stipulated. It was being built in 3 phases.
Correct.
There was a phase from the city mortuary to the Nakumatt Junction.
Right.
There was Nakumatt Junction to all the way to Karen, and then there was the 3rd phase. And the first one is already complete. We all know that from Nakumatt Junction all the way to City Mortuary.
Right.
So now they're working on
phase
our
2.
segment here.
Kwivi Kasawa, you're on course.
Yes, but it does come with a lot of problems. Water issues in our constituency,
yes, traffic,
and also drainage and sewerage,
Yeah.
which are issues that we are grappling with even as we speak today.
Okay.
Yeah.
Hot 96, you're on the air. Good morning. Punguza. Safi sana. Nani ndugu? Ha? Ole Shukuru. Salimia mheshimiwa.
Habari ya leo Le Shuguru. Asio mbali sana na Dagoretti. Asante. Haya, ng'ombe inabebwa na maji. Na mjumbe wa huko ni nani? Yes, niko constituency gani? Mko katika tarafa gani?
Okay.
Nitatafuta mjumbe wako kesho tukiwa bunge, nimwambie mambo kama hayo yanatendeka kule.
Mahali anaongelea na mahali anaishi mahali tofauti.
Tofauti. All right, I'm going to play something for you. And KJ, just tell us if you remember this. In a frisky double. You don't remember this because it hasn't played yet.
The essence of the The energy of the president
Which, how did you guys come up with this? All that material just available all the time?
No, we had a good generation of politicians. They made for good fodder for the show. And
that one in particular was Jenga Karume?
Yes, and I remember the day,
late great.
I remember scripting for this. Yes. And the concept behind it was, if you knew a guy had a lisp, why would you give him a ministry that has so many essays? And when you look at the video, you'll see that the visuals were even funny because we were able to juxtapose the image of the former minister, and we made it look like he was addressing some foreigners.
Right.
So you can imagine how that address must have been.
Oh man. Okay. Here's one more. I don't know if you've heard this one. This one's kind of recent. Just take a listen.
As we focus on agriculture, we are also conscious of the threat of climate change and unpredictable.
Usicheke na nguvu, unajua yeye uko chini ya msimamizi.
Tuko na kazi yake hapa. And he's a good human guy.
Oh, what a guy! What a guy!
Amazing.
What?
Brilliant. And as Kenyans, as much as we want to give the president a lot of flack, we've got to realize that this is a leader of this generation.
Yeah.
And whether we celebrate him in Kenya or not, the world is celebrating His Excellency President Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta. From the time he came on in 2013, you remember Africa was actually looking in our direction with so much hope because of the young generation of leadership in President Uhuru Kenyatta and Deputy President. But even as late as last month, you saw him being celebrated actually as a leader of this generation worldwide. Yeah. So I'm proud of Hechi. Yeah. I'm actually proud of his journey. And it doesn't matter, what his background is. Yeah. Everyone says that, he comes from a background of privilege. He doesn't carry himself as a person who grew up in privilege. Exactly. He has worked for every position that he has gotten. We know the journey, the political journey he's had with the disappointments. He's getting into politics and he's lost elections. He's actually made himself as his own man.
Yeah. And people are now bending over backwards to base themselves here in Kenya.
That's
telling you.
It's a true story.
What?
And that's why for me, his team needs to rethink what they communicate as his flagship achievements. Because there are quite some big achievements that have been registered by this dispensation. However, they're not being communicated. People are actually just dwelling on things that are moving targets. And if I was to critique how they're communicating the achievements of this government, I would say to them that it is very important that we fight corruption. But corruption cannot be a flagship achievement for any dispensation.
Absolutely.
Corruption is actually a moving target. You will never be able to quite nail it as an achievement. Yeah. But the drive needs to happen. It should not be the flagship achievement by this dispensation.
Absolutely. Mheshimiwa John Kiari will have to leave it at that. Thank you so much, MP Dagoretti South. Keep up the good work, my brother.
Thank you,
congratulations
sir.
for all your successes.
I wouldn't want to leave Hot 96. It's a radio station for the young people. Yes. And I'm in the presence of greatness. There's Professor Hambo, there's Jeff Koinange, and we all realize that there won't be employment for each one of the people who are in our generation, from government or from private companies. And I'd like to tell them that there is a place for talent in this country. But even as I celebrate talent, I've got to tell them that the stories of Hamo and Jeff Koinange do tell us that talent is not enough. That talent will only take you so far, but you've now got to put in something else. There's got to be discipline, diligence, and dedication in addition to the talent that you have. Because the world doesn't care for talent. You would know that.
Absolutely.
The world does not, and the world shouldn't care for talent, but it's what you do with your as a custodian of your talent that will get you out there. And these talents can actually now employ people in the thousands, in the hundreds of thousands. So it could be a talent in sports, as we saw Harambee Stars yesterday. It could be a talent in performing arts. It could be in IT or media. these talents are actually the next frontier for meaningful engagement for this generation.
Wow. Hey. Wow. Mheshimiwa, you laid it down. Thank you so much, KJ. That's fantastic. And like the guys on Twitter and social media saying, you are no doubt an inspiration and what they want to see in the next generation of leadership. Asante-san.
Thank you for having me. It's been good times.
And this is what we call
Candid interviews with decision makers.
Catch Jeff Koinange and Professor Hamo every day, Monday to Friday from 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. only on Hot 96.